Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Carlos Lopez Estrada broke through directing Blindspotting before landing Disney's Raya and the Last Dragon. He joined me to discuss his inventive new film Summertime, which opens nationwide this week.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I've been a fan of your work ever since discovering Blindspotting back in 2018. Talk about Summertime. Give us the general premise here. It seems like one of those mosaics.
Summertime is a movie that was written by 27 youth spoken word poets from Los Angeles, and it takes you across the city of LA over the course of one day. Each piece, each scene, each vignette that you get to see was written by a different poet, written and performed by a different poet. So yes, it's a mosaic of sorts. It's a collection of stories, and it's a really heartfelt movie, I believe.
So it's 27. Was this? How did it come about? Was this like pandemic driven, where you had people in different places, or is it completely independent of that?
This was actually pre-pandemic. We shot it in 2019. We premiered it at Sundance 2020, just a few weeks before the madness started, and we've been waiting patiently until now to put it out to the world. So yeah, this was way before. I met them through a nonprofit organization from here, from Los Angeles, called Get Lit, and they work with high school teens, introducing them to spoken word to get them excited about literature in their English classes. And anyway, I met them in a spoken word poetry showcase. I had just such a deeply, profoundly moving experience, and really Summertime is an attempt to recreate that one night where I saw just these 27 poets back to back perform their poetry and share a little bit about themselves and sort of like their place in the world.
So wow, so you see all these 27 different young poets performing in a poetry setting, like a poetry reading. How did you go about deciding casting them? Did you just say, all right, each of you are going to play yourself in this, or did you actually cast other actors, or how'd that work?
No, we essentially all of the poets who were in that showcase ended up in the movie. The prompt was just bring a poem or a scene that you think like best encapsulates who you are today in the city. And we really didn't do much. I mean, we cast for all the other smaller roles, all of them non-actors, by the way. The movie is entirely made up of people from LA who had not acted in front of a camera before. So it was quite the experience. Very non-traditional, but with so much heart.
I love just from a sheer experimenting with the form of filmmaking standpoint. That just sounds, people are gonna love it. Like, that sounds great on its own. But what sort of themes or subjects are tackled? You have these 27 young people, and they're probably writing about, yes, some overarching themes. We've had Black Lives Matter. We've had a lot in the recent months. But was there anything that also surprised you? You know what I mean? Like, these kids are probably speaking from the heart and talking about subjects that maybe you and I as older folks, we don't even know what's going on in their world.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think what was most inspiring to me that one day I saw the showcase was that even though all of their stories and all of their backgrounds are as different as can be, because the poets come from all different schools, all different districts. So some of them just as diverse a bunch as you could meet, yet they all sort of spoke about themes of identity and belonging and their definition of home, and what it means to exist in the city today. So each of them really does so with so much character and so unique to their experience in cultural and their background and ethnic and whatnot. But they really all add a little piece to this mosaic that when you take a step back and when you can look at the whole, it is really just a bunch of really talented, really passionate young adults talking about what it means to exist in the city today, and all the issues that come with that. So it's messy, it's chaotic, but it's also it feels alive in a way that to me was so refreshing. Taking a step back and saying, look, I'm giving you control. I'm giving you the power to shape this movie, and I'm going to do everything within my power to support what you want to say. It was really a life-changing experience.
Absolutely. And you said it's messy and chaotic, but I'm sure it's a controlled chaos. You know what I mean? Like it's.
We tried.
I mean, have you admired, other mosaics in the past? I mean, the first one that comes to mind, of course, is Robert Altman. He was sort of the king of weaving together all those different storylines of, I guess in Los Angeles, I'm trying to think of an example. I guess like a Crash Best Picture would have been in Los Angeles of a mosaic. But, are you a fan of mosaics themselves as a filmmaking, approach?
I mean, I wouldn't say that was sort of like a thing that I was particularly sort of like seeking. I do love Robert Altman's work. I do love Slacker by Richard Linklater, who did this with Austin, and I feel like this movie really, not to sound lazy, but I feel like it kind of wrote itself when I sat through that showcase, because it really, the mosaic was presented to me rather than me trying to devise one. It was like you are seeing Los Angeles through 27 different perspectives, and each of them is so different. They have like such unique characteristics, but also there's this whole that is already existing there. And I feel like my job more than anything was just trying to capture in the most exciting ways. The community of poets already existed. They already knew each other. They already had been intersecting storylines for years and years and years. So really, I felt a little bit more like a documentarian than I felt like a narrative filmmaker. But that's, I think, what I love the most about it.
How did you go about actually stitching them together in terms of, all right, so you have, you have these poems on the page, that they read at the showcase, but do you drop each of those into, final draft and then just flesh it out into a script pages? Or, I want to know your approach, because I know you work with 3 writers on this too, right?
Yeah, more or less. Because, the additional element that made this quite challenging was that most of them were finishing high school. And I met them in April, beginning of May. And a lot of them were moving away from LA. A lot of them were starting jobs and sort of like going all over the place for the next fall. So, which gave us a very short window of time to develop, write, and shoot the movie. We did it over a summer workshop. I think it was about 4 months long. The last month was dedicated to shooting. So in 3 months, we had to put these 27 minds together, bring all their poetry, map out, depending on each poet's neighborhood, or whether their poems was site specific. For example, a poet wanted to do something in public transit, a poet wanted to do something in the Venice Pier. So we sort of like put together a map of the city. One more piece of info is that we wanted the movie to follow an actual route. So it starts in all the way west on the Venice Pier, and then it makes its way all the way to East LA across various neighborhoods. So once we had all the poems, we essentially mapped them out around LA and figured out where we needed additional scenes, where we needed some connective tissue, how the different poems could speak to each other. And this was 3 months of everyday work with all of the poets, and just lots of moving puzzle pieces.
That's really cool that how you say you kind of strung them together in a certain order, how you moved inland. You started on the coast and moved inland to cover the whole city. That's great. Remind our listeners, what is your connection with Los Angeles? I know you were born in Mexico, right? And at what age did you move to the States?
I was born in Mexico City. My whole family's still down there. We moved up to Florida when I was 12. Then I came to California to study film down at Chapman, and I've been here ever since. So even though it's not my actual hometown, I've spent more time here than anywhere else, and I've gotten to become a person in LA, and I got to start working in LA. Most of my friends and the people I work with are here, so it does feel like home to me.
Your big breakthrough feature, Blindspotting. Everyone, if you didn't see it in 2018, run out and watch it now. I just thought it was incredible. And I love the way you opened that with, I remember it was like side by side juxtaposition images, towards the beginning of the opening credits. Like you would have a really swanky, hipster Whole Foods right next to a more of a grittier bodega next to it. I believe that was the juxtaposition. But you did talk about how in that sequence you thought that the comparison of side by side images could really visually tell your story of the city.
I mean, Oakland is a beautiful and a very complicated city because there is so much contrast, and there's entirely different experiences that you can have within a very small space. And I got to meet and really understand Oakland through David Diggs and Rafael Casal, who were the two writer-producer stars of Blindspotting. And I think that is really, there's a lot of change happening in Oakland, and a lot of change that's bringing lots of good things to the communities, and a lot of change that's bringing lots of complicated questions to the communities. And I feel like that montage is trying to capture both. So the split screen made sense just to really, really show you that this is a movie about points of view. This is a movie about, ideas that are split in the middle, and you sort of get to look at both and then decide what to take away from it.
Perfectly said. And remind our listeners about exactly what you just said, the whole concept of the illusion of Rubens' vase that is talked about in that movie, because that's all about perspective. It's that thing we've all seen where it's like it's an image where it looks like either a vase or two human faces, depend how you look at it. It's sort of like one of those magic eye illusion things. But the idea is that, we all have these inherent biases in how we see the world, and we kind of got to teach ourselves to see things from the opposite, equally valid perspective. I thought it was pretty brilliant. But remind our listeners how that factors into that film, and was that something that they had in the script, or did you bring that to that?
No, that I cannot take credit for that is out of David and Rafa's brain. And yeah, I mean, it talks about perspective. It talks about how, based on the very particular circumstances that we come into this world, we are just naturally get to experience the world differently. And in Blindspotting, it's particularly important because David and Rafa are the two lead characters of the film. They live in the same city, but the fact that David is black man and Rafa is a white man just inherently means that they get to experience the city very, very differently. And not to be a salesperson who brings it back to the product or anything, but the thing that I love the most about Summertime is that it does that same idea, that same understanding, that same relationship to a city, but through 27 different points of view. So I have a feeling that why the movie is so important to me is because it allows you to have a conversation about the same city, the same idea, but to really sort of like open your mind and consider so many different perspectives that make it up. And I don't know, I feel like we live in a world that needs empathy as much as possible, and these are really, I feel like this is the only way to fight that Rubens vase example, and just like by allowing other people to share a little bit about their points of view, we are hopefully our way of seeing things broadens up a little bit, and hopefully we make things a little better around us.
Perfectly said. Final seconds, real quick. How cool was it doing an animated movie with Disney, Raya and the Last Dragon, and the whole concept of Kumandra?
It was wild, and I had just finished shooting Summertime, which was as independent as a movie can ever get. And then I stepped into a world that is very different and very challenging and very exciting for different reasons. But I grew up watching Disney films, so being surrounded by all these artists and technicians and storytellers, it was not to sound mushy, but it was a real dream come true. And then to step back now into summertime and have to really experience independent film, and have to do all of the promotion ourselves, and it's been grounding, and it's been exciting, and it's been quite the contrasting journey.
Well, I think you're one of the best filmmakers going today, so keep up the great work. I mean, Blindspotting was illuminating, like we talked about with the Rubens vase. Raya captured the pandemic. I thought that the smoke monster, turning everyone to stone kind of a thing was almost very much like COVID and Kumandra coming together. I mean, it was everything tied in. And then now, as your next piece, Summertime, I think you're going to take it a step further and really dissect Los Angeles. So I really dig what you do, man. I appreciate you joining us on WTOP, and best of luck with Summertime. Everyone should go check it out.
I really appreciate it. This was a lovely chat, so thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.